So it's now 2 years since The Timeless Children aired, one of Doctor Who's most divisive episodes, I suppose you could say, but that's not quite how I see it myself. It's one of my favourites, really. It's my favourite Whittaker era finale by far. And yeah, I made a video about it a couple of years ago called Why the Timeless Children Matters. It was like a video essay thing. Bit rough around the edges looking back at it now, but I do still stand by the points that I made in that video, and I want to sort of expand upon some of them now, looking back, 2 years on, because there is some stuff in that video that I sort of didn't quite get round to saying, some stuff which I've thought of since. Basically just justifying why I think this episode works on a thematic level, and why it's good, basically. The main thrust of my argument is that this story is a Genesis story for the Time Lords, right? It's a story about the Time Lords, and it's a story about regeneration, right? That is the key to all of this, regeneration. And essentially what it does in a nutshell, this story is sort of transform regeneration from, a plot device which sort of is used to prolong the Doctor's life, or any other Time Lord for that matter, and it sort of changes it into something which is much more about something which has always been there in Regeneration, all along, this idea of change and of changing as a person and sort of embracing change and evolving and all that sort of stuff. We got that in Twice Upon a Time. We've had it in loads of other Regeneration stories, this idea of, the Doctor sort of coming to terms with being a new person. But this story takes it one step further and goes, okay, Regeneration to begin with, back in the early days, before the Time Lords, when it was first discovered, it was not just simply this ability to prolong your life. It was actually this sort of opportunity to change into a different person, this sort of metaphor and symbol of possibility. And we see that with the Timeless Child, who goes through all these different sort of ethnicities and nationalities and genders and etc. When we have a little montage of the Timeless Child, changing from a little black girl into like a white boy, an Asian girl, a black man, whatever. We see that from the start. And admittedly, yeah, it's a bit of a retcon, it's a bit of a sort of thing that's been retroactively put in there. But essentially, according to this story, that is what Regeneration has been in universe all along. This sort of metaphor for change and possibility, not just within very narrow parameters and boundaries like we've had with the Doctor over the years, where the Doctor has just been a white man, for 12 incarnations or whatever. But actually, no, Regeneration has in universe always been this thing which allows you to change ethnicity or gender or whatever, and allows you to embrace different possibilities and to be different people. And so the main thrust of what this episode is saying, basically, like I hinted at in that video essay, is this thing basically through the characters of the Doctor and the Master. The Doctor and the Master are both sort of shaken up by the revelation that Regeneration has always been this sort of instrument for change and renewal and etc. And particularly the Master, because the Master has got a part of the Doctor inside of him, because the Doctor was the original Time Lord, the original person from whom Regeneration was derived. And essentially the Doctor is the one out of the pair that comes out of the other side and sort of embraces who she is and all these new lives, these pre-Hartnell Doctors. She does have a bit of a wobbly moment in the middle where she's like, can I keep on going? Can I really do this? Can I come to terms with who I am? And there's that scene with the fugitive Doctor, obviously, where she sort of makes that decision to keep on going and embraces all her past lives. But the Master, on the other hand, is completely unable to comprehend both the fact that there is a part of the Doctor within him, and also what that stands for. So basically this idea that because there's a part of the Doctor within him, there is also a part of this sort of infinite possibility and capacity for change, which he can't, define, he can't describe, he can't put his finger on. The Master just wants to know what's what, and for everything to be the same, really. And we see that most clearly through the Cybermasters. So one of the most common criticisms of this episode that, I see in fan circles and whatever, is this idea that, all these scenes with Tech Taeun, with the Master sort of narrating stuff to the Doctor, apparently it's like a PowerPoint presentation, in quotes, and it's sort of a boring way to relay exposition, and also these scenes sort of have no bearing on the episode overall. That's sort of the general implication of that those scenes don't really need to be there, or don't need to be there in that form. And yeah, okay, that is sort of a different debate, but what I'm going to suggest is that there is actually a through line from those scenes all the way through to the end of the episode, and to the Master's sort of ultimate plan, to create these Cybermasters, the perfect army. And that through line is regeneration. So I've just established that what we see in this episode is regeneration sort of defined and sort of redefined as this vehicle for change and possibility. What we see with the Cybermasters is the complete opposite of that. It's the complete sort of perversion of that, where we get these creatures, these Cyber Time Lord hybrids, who can regenerate, but they only regenerate into themselves. They only regenerate into the same thing. They just keep on going as the same thing, forever and ever. And we see that when the Master, makes one of them shoot the other one, and then it stands back up, and it just, comes back as the same thing that it was when it died. So it's not undergoing any process of change or evolving. It just comes back the same. And metaphorically speaking, you could say that that is how Doctor Who has been for its first, 55 years or whatever, where yes, the lead actor has changed, but only within very narrow parameters. It's always been white, always been a man, and it's only very recently with this era that has changed. The Doctor has sort of been broken open as this character, as this legend almost, to encompass women, to encompass people of colour, and going forward, that's clearly something we're going to see more of in the future, hopefully with the 14th Doctor too. So that is in a nutshell basically why I think this story works so well on a thematic level, because it's all about regeneration. And it sort of has those two attitudes, towards regeneration, as a sort of metaphor for possibility and change, whatever, and embracing possibility and embracing change. It has those two attitudes represented in the episode in the form of the Doctor and the Master. The Doctor does embrace it, the Master is unable to embrace it or unwilling to embrace it, to the extent where he creates this whole army of beings who are sort of confined to only ever being one thing. They can only ever be one person, one personality. And that works on so many levels as well, because in the episode, obviously, we do get the sort of two key things of gender and race which come up. But it's not just limited to that. It's not just limited to this capacity to sort of embrace, different ethnicities or different genders or whatever. Just this very idea fundamentally of embracing different parts of yourself or different identities, not sort of being pigeonholed into one box or one thing, embracing all the different parts of yourself basically, and not being sort of confined to one stereotype or whatever. I mean, that is a very sort of fundamental idea which I think everybody can probably relate to on some level. But that's what I think. What do you think? Do you have any contradictory thoughts, any counter arguments, or anything to add? Do you agree, disagree, or sit somewhere in between? Whatever the case, I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Please do leave a like if you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe if you're new to the channel, and also feel free to check out my Patreon page in the description below if that floats your boat. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye for now.